Welcome to Second Wind, a show by the team at Also Known As, where we talk to colleagues and friends that inspire us. Today I'm joined by Chapin Clark, the legendary brain behind the iconic RGA Twitter account. I didn't realize you hired Paulie Derry and
Yeah,
launched a bit of an icon now.
one of the smartest things I ever did, in all honesty. It's been a pleasure watching him go off to like do bigger and better things and to watch his career flourish. It's been great.
No, I love the trend of creatives becoming CMOs. I think that's something I'd like to see a lot more of.
It sounds, yeah, on paper, it's great. Although I will say, Paulie was not the easiest client we had when we worked with Uber. We had a couple of stints working with Uber as a client, and the first go around,
Yeah.
Paulie was our like main social client, and he's not easy. He's demanding.
Oh, because he knows how to make the sausage.
That's right.
Sausage must be good.
That's right. Yeah.
Is that a FedEx ad I see there?
It is it's
Petty X.
Petty X, so it's a little
Nice.
bit of
Yeah,
I am a
that's great.
copywriter, so it's
Sure.
a little bit of wordplay.
You've been at RGA 25 years. What was that entry point?
I had very kind of noble aims. I saw myself working at like the New Yorker and writing over 50,000 word think pieces on.
And this would be printed words, right? Like
Of course.
of
course.
This is pre-digital.
Of course. Yeah. I was kind of beating my head against the wall. I wasn't getting jobs that I really wanted. Part of it was just like getting the entitlement beat out of me. Like I thought I was special and that I was destined to do great things. And part of it was just I had to have some work experience and sort of be kind of out in the world and learn that I wasn't that special and that,
What a lovely way to enter the workforce.
yeah. And it was,
that I wasn't special.
well, I think that's an important, I mean, I'm sort of joking, but not really,
Yeah.
because I think
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
especially if you receive a certain education, you go to certain schools and you're sort of taught, or depending on how you're parented or whatever, taught to think that you're this special flower.
We don't do that in Australia.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
We have tall poppy syndrome where any flower that gets a little bit tall, we just cut
it
down.
off, beat it down.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's good learning for anyone to go through a little of that, as long as it doesn't totally kill your spirit. And at the time, it was, I graduated into a recession, graduated from college into a recession.
And probably 9/11 times, right? Or was that pre?
It was pre, and then I joined RGA actually just before 9/11, like maybe
Wow.
2 weeks before.
In New York?
In New York, yeah.
Wow. 2
so yeah,
weeks
it was
before.
like, yeah, it was like week 3, and
So you like finally got a job, and then the world the world changed basically.
Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, I remember, our offices were on 9th Avenue, in Hell's Kitchen in
wow.
the West
Wow.
30s at the time. So,
Yep.
I'll never forget leaving work that day. I mean, I watched the whole thing happen. I was at RGA because I went in to work early to actually get ready. I had a meeting. We were working with IBM at the time as a client, and I was supposed to go down to 55 Broad Street that morning for a client meeting. And obviously I didn't go to the meeting because it was clear something was happening. And I'll never forget leaving work that day and walking south to go home and seeing people walking north up 9th Avenue covered in ash who had walked all the way up from the financial district. And yeah, it was a crazy, I just started at RGA as a freelance copywriter, kind of just, I figured it was maybe time to try something different.
So did you submit a bunch of pieces you'd written to the agency and they brought you on as a freelancer, or how did that go?
It was a very different time, and RGA was a different company. So we really weren't a full service ad agency by any means at that time. We were really a web design shop.
Sure.
Run very much like a production company where we weren't doing sort of big messaging campaigns. We were designing beautiful little sort of websites and microsites for clients. As a writer, my entree was really like, I had a friend who was working at RGA and she said, "Oh, we need writers. You should," and so I had round of interviews with people, and it was literally like, have you written things professionally anywhere before? Great, like you're hired.
Yeah.
Sounds a little crazy, and it was a little crazy. The the content, what we were doing was like, I was hired to write, pages of long form content about servers and software for IBM.
Ah, yeah,
I
right.
wasn't doing headlines and taglines or writing scripts or anything yet. And I was fortunate to just kind of stick around and learn on the job as the company learned, and as the company grew and we started, doing different kinds of work, operating more at the sort of like, CMO level as opposed to like
Pushing upstream, yeah.
junior brand managers who, we were working with on website redesigns.
Because
Uh,
the internet back in the early 2000s was a pretty free, creative, and weird space. Maybe there was a lot less attention, and I would say a lot less commerce. There was a lot less of these big enterprise companies that sort of control these sandboxes that are beautifully designed, and it was just like a bunch of weird flash websites, right?
well, it was, there was a mix of all of that going on. I
Yeah.
think we were, you know, the work we were doing for IBM was really to try and like bring some order to that chaos. And we were sort of doing systematic design work for IBM.com to sort of like organize this mass of sprawling information, all these different business units, and sort of bring some consistency and clarity to that. For Nike, we were doing a lot of these kind of isolate these discrete kind of one-off brand experiences, these flash microsites that were really beautifully designed artifacts that, the problem was once you experienced it, like that's kind of it. It doesn't, why does it need to exist anymore? Also, how do you find it? Thinking about sort of a media strategy and media dollars to try and drive people to something like that. Like, wasn't,
I
didn't always
remember those
factor in.
pesky questions. Well, how we get people there? No, no, no. Don't worry about that. Just we need $1 million to make an
Yeah.
amazing website that's an incredible experience.
Well, and then at the same time, the on the other sort of side of things for Nike, we were doing things like, Nike ID that allowed you to, it was a commerce experience, but it allowed you to like customize, design your own shoe, order it, receive it. We worked on Nike.com as well. So we were definitely like um kind of blazing trails on the like the e-commerce side of things as well. What we weren't doing yet, because we just, people didn't think of us in that way, and we didn't have the relationships, we weren't doing like, big kind of like broadcast campaign ideas,
Advertising, yeah,
true advertising.
yeah. And I mean, what was that journey like to go from like really dry B2B copy for IBM to? I mean, you've been there 25 years, so it's a very long time, and I'm
Yeah.
sure it's been a lot of different pivots and changes through that time. But broad strokes, like how do you go from being like a pretty like I guess maybe commoditized copywriter to someone who's really like leading things creatively? Is you know I don't know when you started doing or RGA started doing the Twitter account. I think it's been around for a long time, but that's a really iconic sort of like part of the industry, in my opinion. It's a little frustrating for me because my best performing LinkedIn content is actually just screenshots with maybe some like tiny little comment or like some minorly witty remark about the post. But my top two performing LinkedIn posts are screenshots of your tweets from the RGA Twitter. I
Well,
still call it Twitter, but
I'm happy to help. You can't be focused on numbers now anyway, because everything's splintered and the algorithms
we
work
love numbers.
work
Human,
against you.
humans love numbers.
But for me, again, it was really kind of learning on the job.
Mm.
Like, as we grew and as we started to do more campaign style work, we hired more people with traditional advertising backgrounds who brought brains and experience and like an expertise in craft that we didn't have at that point. And so I watched I watched those people. I looked at like what they did and started to get a sense of like what was considered good work and what was award-winning work, and just tried to absorb as much as I could.
What do you think in terms of time, that transition from, being more of a like writer with an ambition to be a more like long form journalist to being someone who felt really comfortable with that, conceptual process that agencies have always had?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it was iterative and sort of, it's one of those things where it just kind of, you don't really realize it's happening. And then at a certain point, it's you're less phased
Like,
by like
yeah,
a brief or like,
sure.
oh, I know how to approach this, and to be, to be clear, and I wouldn't consider myself like the most genius, like concept or like someone who there are those people who have like a real gift for like finding the interesting way in on a brief, finding the tension, looking at something from a different angle and coming up with great attention grabbing ideas, stunts, things like that. Like I'm like serviceable in that area, like I do consider myself a bit of a generalist where I can kind of like, you can throw me on any sort of a brief and I'll give you something interesting, but I don't know that I would be like the go-to person for like your big sort of can bait idea for Coachella or Art Basel or whatever, or even to like, write a script for a Super Bowl spot or whatever. I think that is one of the things about our work is like, there's so many different types of things that we make now or that we're asked to make. And some people are great at certain things and like just okay at other things, or maybe weak in other areas. And I don't know, you need all of it.
Who are the creatives you kind of look up to? I mean, personally, like Jerry Graff I've always been a bit of a Jerry Graff fanboy ever since that Ragu.
Parents in bed, but it's just 8 o'clock. That's why they taught you should always knock. You need Ragu, 'cause growing up's tough. Give him Ragu, he's been through enough.
A long day of childhood calls for America's favorite pasta sauce.
Everyone talks about Skittles, but he did this work for Starburst.
Pardon me. Are those new berries and cream Starburst?
Yeah?
Oh! Berries and cream, berries and cream. I'm a little lad who loves berries and cream. Berries and cream, berries and cream. I'm a little lad who loves berries and cream.
That I really loved, really funny spots. He did and then there was this great campaign for Crest, which was like the insight or the line. It was like the line even was, you can say anything with a smile. And so it was like these different situations where like a guy is in like a bulldozer and he's tearing down like a kid's playground.
Hey, what are you doing?
I'm knocking down the playground.
Yeah, I definitely loved his sensibility, ability to find that intersection of like legitimately funny, legitimately funny humor and like insight and brand, like bring it all together in a way that actually like serves a brand.
Yeah, and it always felt like it was like really tightly tied to like the product. Do you know what I mean? Like what was good about the product? That's
what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, but oftentimes the critique is always like, oh, you could swap any brand for this,
right? It's not ownable.
Yeah. Let me ask you what, RGA's obviously had definitely some reinventions over the years. I think personally, I spent 4 years at Firstborn. Right after I joined, the Dentsu acquisition happened, and initially they kind of left us alone, and then there was just this like slow draining of the life and culture, and eventually it just became part of Dentsu.
First of all, like a thing I love about RGA and probably the main thing that's kept me there for 25 years is just how culturally it's in the DNA. It's a place that embraces change, and from the beginning has been all about sort of experimenting with technology and sort of finding out how to make technology work in service of the client or the project. So even before when we were like a film company, doing visual effects and doing film title design, the people at RGA there wasn't off the shelf software, Final Cut Pro, and like these off the shelf tools that now allow anyone to sort of be a be a filmmaker. People at RGA were like hacking things together, figuring out how to achieve these visual effects kind of on the fly with hardware and software that didn't exist. So like from the beginning, that's been baked into the way that the company operates. So thinking about RGA now, I sort of feel like we're in a way getting back to our roots where there are these tools, and there's AI and but we're all searching for use cases. We're all searching for
It's a hammer looking for a nail.
And in a lot of cases. And so it's like this incredibly powerful thing with such great potential, how do we harness it? How do we put it to use for our clients in ways that make sense, that aren't just gratuitous, like AI for AI's sake?
You talked about craft and, the sort of title design. And, I think my favorite artists are always really heavily into like the details of production and craft. And I think, Jerry Graff is another great example. Like when I talk to him about his work, there's so much experimentation on set and, improvisation of scripts and lines and trying different things. And I think part of what the problem is with the industry now is there's been this sort of like, there's always been silos, but I think as things have become more complex, you have more like specialists in silos working on a specific area. And sometimes you lose the magic of an idea. When you first mentioned that crest idea, it's just kind of like when you hear the idea, it's a bit flat, but when you tell me about the spot, I can see it and I can see the magic of it, right? So it's like
it's all in the performances, the timing. Timing is comedy. It's comedy, so timing is so important. But like the pacing of those spots, and the cutting and everything, they're relatively simple spots, but getting all those little details just right, it really like makes it sing.
I'm thinking of the do you remember the best promo spot I think I've ever seen is the Little Caesars campaign, the $5 pizza with the guy with the broken arm breaks through the cast to like give her the $5 note.
One hot and ready pizza, $5.
Get a hot and ready pepperoni pizza for $5.
Yeah. And
it's like 10-second spot, it's like so tight. Like there's nothing there that's wasted. It's like just super focused.
It's, making that kind of advertising is it's an art, and there's such craft to it in the same way that like beautiful design is, beautiful typography, macro forces at work, but like people read less, people are less literate, sure. People are less culturally literate. And I do fear that we're getting into an era of sort of like just okay is good enough, or like good, because that just content just existing is, at a certain volume is enough, because you have to like fill all these channels and fill all these spaces. And so no one really notices those little details of like how, is the line crafted just so, is the visual, the visual pun delivered just so, or whatever. It's like, and so it does make me sad a little bit to sort of contemplate like a future where, that kind of stuff doesn't matter.
Anybody can go on Meta and put together a pretty compelling like campaign.
Sure. Yeah. There's an argument to be made for some people to like just go cut out the middleman and just sort of, work directly with platforms. I think so. It behooves us to, yes, the RGA name is still carries weight and there's legacy there, and that, that opens doors. But it's a much more competitive landscape now. I think much more just, among agencies, but also with tech platforms themselves, with three guys in a loft in Brooklyn who like, have the tools and are just really talented and can work fast and maybe work cheaper, competing on many different levels. I think it behooves us to be able to work with different partners. So the reality is clients are going to be going to different people for different things. The era of the sort of like all-encompassing relationship with that one agency partner AOR, who does everything for you, the AOR, very, very rare / non-existent now. So you need to be able to, we need to be good partners working with one or more other agencies, or with, a client's influencer shop that they work with.
It's shocking sometimes how many
partners.
agencies are credited on a really simple piece of work.
Right.
It's like, did it really take 5 like holding companies to make this like stunt?
Maybe, or maybe that's, some of that is just awards industry kind of
Everyone wants a
inflation.
shout out. Yeah, everyone wants the 12 lines.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Twitter account, because you probably realized I'm quite a fan by now, but how did that start? Is that a team of people? Is it just you? Is it, I mean, I'm looking at it now and it's like, you can spot the like corporate posts on there for sure. But I think, honestly, like, I think the way you bring in different, memes from culture, and like, I know White Lotus is like often used really beautifully there. But I think for me, the trades, not to throw shade at anybody in particular, because I know it's hard to be a trade journalist, but I think there's a lot of nuance lacking to the actual experience of working in an agency, of like, being in the trenches day in, day out.
It was a bit of like a happy accident where, it was 2009, so 16 years ago. I had already been using Twitter for myself, just messing around with it, making jokes. It was really the first social platform that, as a writer, felt like, this was made for me, because it really was sort of, text based and
140. That was it.
Yeah. And we had a Twitter account that was run by our corp comms group. And I think Twitter wasn't Twitter yet. And they viewed it as just another responsibility. And so they were using it to like post job listings and stuff. And I think they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't have the time to deal with it. And so our head of PR at the time came to me and just said, "Hey, you're a writer. You're already using Twitter. You've been here a while. You know the company
1 +
and the
1
culture.
= 2. Yeah.
Do you want it to?" She was really, it was framed like she was asking me for a favor. She was like, "Hey, would you mind like just, maybe you could tweet for us and we'll just see how it goes. And if you don't like it, we can figure something else out or whatever." So that's how it started. I did start posting in the first person right away because it felt weird to be saying like the collective we. I think maybe I would have felt more pressure if it was like, we think this or we're doing that. To be speaking for like a collective, I think made me nervous a little bit. So I did start posting kind of from the beginning in the first person, which stuck. Early on I was doing I behaved like like one of the trades, actually. Like I would see an interesting article about something and I would share a link to that. And it was sort of like almost like a sort of like, "Hey, here's what's going on today in advertising. Here's a thing that I saw." And then
did you comment? Did you editorialize it a little bit, or was it more just like repost?
Maybe with a little editorial layer on top of it, but
Funny?
I tried, probably sometimes it was funny.
It was probably funny.
Sometimes not, but like, I just realized, okay, this is sort of pointless. Like there are 20 other outlets where like, this is what they do. They're already sharing these links. Like what you have to like bring something distinctive or have something different to say otherwise what's the point?
All the things that you say to your clients, you're sort of saying to yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly. I mean, that's a great point actually, where we were able to sort of practice what we preached a little bit with the Twitter. And in a way that people, I think, noticed over time, and appreciated.
Now I'm looking at your positioning statement. Can I ask you about that? Because I mean, I personally spend a fair amount of time, like, what's the machinating maybe on like positioning statements for agencies. Like the word agencies sucks now, right? Everybody hates, no one wants another agency, right? So I think everybody's looking for like this word to describe succinctly and clearly. And I think independent creative innovation company for the intelligence age. Was that a long, protracted process? Were you involved in that? Be there?
I may be lightly involved, at the very end of the process, or maybe I was asked my opinion. But there are a lot of smart people at RGA, kind of ruminating on these things. I think the independent part was seen as, important to convey.
That's recent-ish news, right?
Yeah, with our moving on from IPG and becoming an independent company. I think that was an important thing to get out there.
Can you tell us about that? What can you tell us about the reason behind that?
There are, large forces at play that affect us, but aren't unique to us. I mean, like just, the holding companies as a group are kind of going all in on, big data
What does that even mean?
Well, I mean, I think,
I used to love the media pitches from the Dentsu group, and I'd be like, and then I'd see the work and I'm like, well,
I guess I'm dating myself by saying big data. That's an old, but like data at scale,
data. We understand what consumers are doing, where they're buying, what they're engaging with, those kinds of things.
You can see why it would be a compelling story for, a holding company to be able to go to a massive multinational corporation and be able to say like,
so we can send you a birthday email. Right. I mean, honestly, do you think there's a brand that's using big data in a meaningful way to drive the consumer experience, like across channels? Like, is anyone doing that well? I haven't really seen anybody doing that personally.
I mean, I think so. I think so. I mean, to be honest, that's a part of the business
Your
that
clients,
I just
right?
I don't think about. I don't,
Sure.
That's not what I'm focused on,
Yeah. As a consumer, do you feel like brands are able to like unify and elegantly communicate to you in a way that's meaningful and that feels like a connected ecosystem where like big data is like powering that understanding and context?
You mean like across channels and
the dream they're selling, right, is that it's like we understand consumers and we can target sales messages and products to their specific, beliefs, right? And like that's the sell, right?
Yeah, and I think also, the promise of being able to like modulate like dial up certain messaging or dial back certain messaging depending on context or like occasion,
I can barely like skip my subscription in time and get the cadence of my like deliveries right.
I mean, I will say again, this is what we as agencies, in part, what we're up against is, I am impressed, like when I'm on Instagram and I get served Instagram ads.
They're pretty good. Yeah.
They're, 4 out of 5 times, I would say it's something that is like,
you buy a lot of stuff off Instagram.
I don't really, but I have because I've seen ads that really spoke to me.
Consumer decision journey or whatever we call it, right? That like experience of coming across a product and then buying it. It traditionally was very long, right? And you had like all these steps in the funnel. I've been on TikTok and I'm not on social anymore, but I've been on TikTok and that like CDJ has been compressed to like 4 or 5 seconds, usually by an influencer. But like I was kind of blown away when I first bought something off TikTok, and it's usually junk. But like to be able to compress that whole process down to a couple of seconds is like pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think sometimes there are those very sort of fast or impulse decisions, but like I think sometimes the bigger story is like just the traditional funnel doesn't really apply anymore, right? Like you're kind of all over you're at the top of the funnel, then you're here, then you come back out, and then you're getting inputs from all over the place, whether it's people you follow on social media, it's influencers, it's broadcast messaging, it's a TV spot. And then you go to a Reddit, a subreddit to like learn more about like from a community of people who are, real geeks about like a certain subject or a product. That's, sort of a big challenge that we face now as a partner to brands to sort of help them navigate that.
What advice would you have for juniors trying to break into the creative industry?
Say yes to things, be open to things that may, at first seem like they're not very sexy or interesting, that can turn into
like
things.
IBM server copy.
Yeah, or Twitter, or the Twitter thing where it's like, I could have said, oh, that's like one more task I have to do that I'm not getting paid extra for. Forget it, find someone else. It's good to have some sort of respect and deference for your elders, for your coworkers, like be professional. But I would say also like, don't have confidence in yourself and what you're bringing as like a younger creative.
Don't have confidence.
What did you say?
Don't, have confidence.
Yeah.
It sounded like don't have confidence, but
sorry. No, I mean, you
like,
should have confidence.
Yeah, you
have
should
confidence in yourself and your abilities and what you bring.
show
'Cause I
respect, don't have confidence.
I know, I'm a little all over the place here. I do want to be clear, but I think because things are changing so fast, new technologies crop up. I mean, the pace of kind of what AI can do, it's crazy. Every month, every 3 months, culture changes so fast. And in a way, we're all always kind of starting over. It doesn't matter sort of like what age you are, what experience level you are.
Do you think that kids need to go to college?
It depends on what you want to do. I
in a creative field like, us.
Do you have to? No, I don't think you have to. I think you probably get a lot of things out of it that can serve you well.
Is it still mandatory to have a college degree to get a job at a place like RGA?
It is not. That was something that we addressed at some point. I forget, it was 2021 maybe, where we changed our requirements to try and sort of open things up and sort of
It's great.
Get a more diverse pipeline and people from different backgrounds. I mean, my boss for a long time at RGA was Nick Law. I mean, I certainly learned a lot from him, but he didn't go to college, and was, I think he went straight into apprenticing at like wherever, Landor or what, brand. He went straight into sort of the brand world. And, he's, incredibly talented, very literate, for a designer, like a very kind of well-read person who's also like a really strong writer. And so I don't think you have to, it depends on the person, if you know what you want to do. Some people have that where they're just, I didn't have it, it took me a while to I didn't know what to do with myself when I first got out of school, but some people are like, I just need to get to it. I know what I want. I know like what I need to do.
What would you like to be remembered as?
A lot of the ways you have an impact as a creative at an agency are like quiet, kind of behind the scenes, pitching in on a project or a pitch, making a suggestion on someone else's work that like changes it for the better and sort of, makes a difference in the outcome. I think I'd like to be remembered as a mentor, as someone who like made a difference in other people's careers. Like we started off by talking about Pauly. Like I wouldn't go so far as to say I was his mentor, but I would love to think that I played some small.
Well, you hired him. He wouldn't have got a job in America if you hadn't hired him. Right?
He would have been all right. He would have been all right without me, but
maybe.
But I'd like to think
going to RGA is a pretty strong start in America.
It was a good entree. It was a good entree.
Oh yeah.
But there are other people
terrible
who
client for you at Uber. No, I'm kidding.
He was tough, but fair. Tough but fair.
Sure. Yeah.
But there are lots of people who have gone on from RGA to the the Widens, the Apples, the Spotifys of the world, and have done great work at those places. And so I would like to think that some little bit, some at the atomic level or whatever, something rubbed off from me, to those people and help them in their path.
You helped people. That's a nice way to be remembered. You made an impact on people. I think that's really, really something.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's corny, but No,
I think it's meaningful. Well, Chapin, I appreciate the time. And
thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if this was you at the hotel, but this is a very good tweet as well. This and a deck that needs to be completely overhauled in the next 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yes. I recognize that scene. So yeah, I appreciate your time and your insights, and I'll continue to enjoy your tweets for many years to come.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.